Welcome back to Sleepyhead Society, where history unfolds at the perfect pace for rest and relaxation. Tonight, we're taking a long, slow journey back nearly 2,000 years to the marble halls and steamy chambers of ancient Rome's most beloved institutions, the public baths. Close your eyes and imagine stepping through time, past the bustling streets of the Eternal City, where the afternoon sun casts long shadows between towering columns and terracotta rooftops. The sounds of daily life fade into a gentle murmur as we approach one of Rome's magnificent Thermae, those grand public bath complexes that served as the beating heart of Roman social life. Tonight we'll explore every corner of these remarkable places, from the moment a Roman citizen finished their daily work and made their way through the city streets, to the final relaxing moments before heading home in the early evening. We'll discover the intricate engineering that made these marvels possible, meet the people who gathered there daily, and understand how something as simple as bathing became one of the most important rituals in the ancient world. Picture, if you will, the streets of Rome in the mid-afternoon. The sun hangs heavy in the Mediterranean sky, casting everything in that golden light that seems to slow time itself. Work is winding down across the city. In the Forum, merchants are beginning to pack away their wares. Scribes set down their styluses and craftsmen clean their tools. This is the sacred hour, the time when all of Rome begins its daily pilgrimage to the baths. It didn't matter if you were a wealthy senator living in a villa on the Palatine Hill or a freed slave working in a small shop near the Tiber. Rich or poor, young or old, citizen or foreigner, everyone moved in the same gentle current toward the great bath complexes that dotted the city like islands of relaxation. The Romans called this ritual so essential to civilized life that they considered it one of the things that separated them from the barbarian tribes beyond their borders. To be Roman was to bathe daily in heated waters, to oil one's skin, to socialize with fellow citizens in rooms filled with warm, humid air that seemed to wash away not just the dirt of the day, but its worries as well. Walking through the streets toward the baths, our Roman citizen, let's call him Marcus, would pass vendors selling small clay oil flasks, strigils for scraping the skin clean, and towels woven from Egyptian linen. The anticipation built with each step, the promise of warm water and good company drawing him forward like a gentle tide. The largest baths in Rome could accommodate thousands of people at once. The baths of Caracalla, completed in 216 AD, sprawled across 33 acres and could hold 1,600 bathers simultaneously. The baths of Diocletian were even larger, welcoming up to 3,000 people at a time into their marble embrace. As Marcus approached the entrance, he would see the familiar sight of other Romans converging from all directions, some in simple tunics, others in elaborate togas, all united by this shared daily ritual that had been part of Roman life for centuries. The entrance to a Roman bath complex was designed to impress and welcome. Massive columns supported porticos decorated with mosaics and frescoes. The floor beneath Marcus's sandals might be covered in intricate geometric patterns made from tiny coloured stones, each piece carefully placed by skilled craftsmen. The cost of entry was surprisingly affordable, usually just a quadrans, the smallest Roman coin, worth about a quarter of a sesterce. This modest fee ensured that bathing remained accessible to almost everyone in Roman society. Slaves, however, often entered free when accompanying their masters, or sometimes had their own designated hours when they could use the facilities. The first thing that would strike any visitor was the sheer scale of these buildings. The ceilings soared overhead, supported by massive arches and domes that seemed to float impossibly in the air. Light streamed in through carefully positioned windows, illuminating columns of steam that rose from the heated rooms like incense in a temple. The sound inside was distinctive, not the harsh echo you might expect in such a large stone building, but rather a gentle, muffled ambience created by the constant presence of water and steam. Conversations blended into a soft murmur, punctuated by the splash of someone entering a pool or the rhythmic scraping of a strigil against skin. Mixed with the steam was the scent of olive oil, used liberally by the Romans for cleaning and protection. There might also be hints of imported perfumes, incense burning in small alcoves dedicated to various gods, and the clean smell of heated stone and fresh water. Marcus would hand his quadrants to the attendant, usually a slave or freedman, whose job it was to collect the entry fees and maintain order in the complex. These men knew the regular patrons by name, understood the unspoken social hierarchies, and could direct visitors to whatever services they might need. The first stop in any Roman bath was the apoditarium, the changing room. This was more than just a place to undress. It was where the transformation from citizen of the street to member of the bathing community began. The apoditarium was typically a large rectangular room, lined with stone benches and dotted with niches carved into the walls. These niches served as primitive lockers where bathers could store their clothing and personal belongings. The more elaborate Thermae had attendants, usually slaves, whose job it was to guard the clothing of the wealthy patrons. Marcus would begin the familiar ritual of undressing, folding his tunic carefully and placing it in one of the wall niches along with his belt, any jewellery and his sandals. In a society where clothing was expensive and handmade, taking care of one's garments was important. Thieves were not unknown in the baths, which is why many Romans preferred to bring a slave or hire an attendant to watch their belongings. The atmosphere in the apoditarium was generally relaxed and social. Men who might never interact in the formal setting of the forum or basilica found themselves sitting side by side on stone benches, sharing the common humanity of the bath experience. Conversations might range from politics to philosophy, from business deals to family gossip. Some Romans came to the baths with their own supplies, their personal strigil, high-quality olive oil in decorative ceramic flasks, imported soaps made with exotic ingredients like palm oil or ash from Spain. Others relied on the bath's own supplies or purchased what they needed from vendors inside the complex. The changing process was unhurried. There was no sense of rush in the Roman baths, quite the opposite. The entire experience was designed to promote relaxation and social interaction. A Roman might spend several minutes in the apoditarium, catching up with friends, making new acquaintances, or simply sitting quietly and preparing mentally for the bathing ritual ahead. The benches were often made of marble or other stone that stayed cool to the touch, providing a comfortable place to sit even when the rest of the building was heated. Some of the more luxurious baths had benches with fabric cushions or even small backrests carved directly into the stone. Nudity in this context was completely natural and unremarkable to the Romans. They saw the human body as something to be celebrated and cared for, not hidden away. The bath was one place where social distinctions based on clothing and jewellery temporarily disappeared, leaving only the shared experience of being human. As Marcus finished preparing, he might take a moment to appreciate the artwork around him. The apoditarium walls were often decorated with frescoes depicting mythological scenes, particularly those involving water. Neptune rising from the waves, nymphs playing in springs, or scenes from the Odyssey showing Odysseus's various encounters with the sea. Before entering the heated rooms and pools, most Romans engaged in some form of physical exercise in the palestra, the exercise yard that was an integral part of most bath complexes. This open-air courtyard was surrounded by covered walkways and might include gardens, fountains, and spaces for various activities. The concept behind this exercise was both practical and philosophical. Practically, working up a sweat before bathing made the whole cleansing process more effective. Philosophically, the Romans believed in the Greek ideal of a sound mind in a sound body, mens sana in corpore sano. Physical fitness was seen as essential to moral and intellectual health. Marcus might begin with some light calisthenics, stretching exercises that the Romans learned from Greek athletic traditions. The palestra usually had equipment for various activities, leather balls of different sizes for catching games, weights made of stone or metal for strength training, and open spaces for wrestling or boxing. Ball games were particularly popular. Romans played a game called trigon, where 3 players stood in a triangle and threw balls back and forth, trying to catch and throw simultaneously with great speed and dexterity. Another popular game was harpastum, a kind of keep-away game that could involve many players and required both strategy and athleticism. The exercise wasn't meant to be strenuous by modern standards. Romans preferred activities that warmed the body and promoted flexibility rather than exhausting workouts. The goal was to prepare the body for the bathing ritual, not to achieve peak athletic performance. Between exercises, Marcus might pause to chat with other bathers. The palestra was an excellent place for social interaction, as the shared physical activity broke down formal barriers and created a sense of camaraderie. Business deals were often discussed between sets of exercises, political alliances formed over games of ball, and friendships deepened through friendly competition. Some bathers preferred to skip the exercise entirely and go straight to the oil application. Slaves or bath attendants would rub olive oil all over the body, working it into the skin until every surface gleamed. This oil served multiple purposes. It protected the skin from the heat of the baths, helped trap dirt and dead skin cells that could then be scraped away, and left the skin feeling smooth and moisturized. The quality of the oil varied depending on what one could afford. The wealthy might use oil infused with expensive perfumes imported from Egypt or India. Fragrances like nard, cinnamon, or myrrh that cost more per ounce than a labourer earned in a month. Common citizens used plain olive oil, but even this was considered a luxury in many parts of the ancient world. The application of oil was often a social activity in itself. Friends might oil each other's backs, or a Roman might employ a bath attendant for this service. The process was thorough and unhurried, with special attention paid to areas that would be most effectively cleaned in the baths: the arms and legs, the torso, and particularly the back where one couldn't easily reach. Some Romans brought their own personal strigils, curved bronze implements used to scrape oil and dirt from the skin. A well-made strigil was considered a valuable possession, often decorated with engravings or inlaid with precious metals. The handle might be wrapped in leather for a better grip, and the curved blade would be polished to a mirror finish. As the oil soaked into his skin and the gentle exercise warmed his muscles, Marcus could feel the stresses of the day beginning to dissolve. The palaestra represented the transition from the hurried world outside to the timeless ritual of the baths themselves. To truly understand what happened in Roman public baths, we must appreciate the incredible engineering that made them possible. The hypocaust system that heated these vast complexes was one of the most sophisticated technologies of the ancient world, a testament to Roman ingenuity that wouldn't be surpassed for over 1,000 years. The word hypocaust comes from the Greek, meaning heat from below, and that describes exactly how the system worked. Beneath the floors of the heated rooms lay a hidden world of pillars, chambers, and carefully designed air passages that distributed warmth throughout the entire complex. The process began with the prefernium, the furnace room where slaves fed wood into massive stone ovens. These furnaces burned constantly during the bath's operating hours, consuming enormous quantities of fuel. The heat they produced was intense enough to turn water into steam and warm stones until they were almost too hot to touch. From the furnaces, hot air and gases flowed into the hypocaust chamber, the space beneath the raised floors of the bathrooms. This chamber was supported by hundreds of small brick or stone pillars called pillae, each about 8 inches square and spaced roughly 2 feet apart. The pillars held up thick stone floors that could bear the weight of the rooms above, while lassoing hot air to circulate freely underneath. The floors themselves were works of engineering art. They consisted of multiple layers. First, large stone slabs supported by the pillae, then a layer of concrete, then a layer of tiles, and finally, decorative marble or mosaic surfaces. This complex construction served several purposes. It distributed weight evenly, provided thermal mass to store and gradually release heat, and created a surface that was warm but not burning to bare feet. But the Romans didn't stop at heating floors. They also developed a system for heating the walls, using hollow tiles called tubuli that were built into the wall structure. Hot air from the hypocaust chambers was drawn up through these hollow spaces, warming the walls from the inside and creating radiant heat that filled the entire room. The hottest rooms, like the caldarium, were positioned closest to the furnaces and received the most direct heat. The warm rooms, or tepidarium, were farther away and received heat that had already been tempered by passing through other chambers. The cold rooms, or frigidarium, were often positioned on the opposite side of the complex and relied on natural cooling rather than artificial heating. Water heating was accomplished through a separate but related system. Large bronze or lead tanks were positioned over the furnaces or connected to them through heating chambers. The water in these tanks could be kept at exactly the right temperature for the various pools and baths throughout the complex. The Romans understood that different activities required different temperatures, and they engineered their baths accordingly. The caldarium might maintain a temperature of 40 to 50 degrees Celsius, 104 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to induce heavy sweating but not so hot as to be dangerous. The tepidarium was kept at a more moderate 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, 77 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, while the frigidarium offered pools of unheated water that might be as cool as 15 to 20 degrees Celsius, 59 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Managing these temperature differences required careful attention to airflow and ventilation. The Romans built their baths with strategically placed windows and vents that could be opened or closed to regulate both temperature and humidity. The largest windows often faced south to take advantage of solar heating during the day, while smaller vents near the ceiling allowed excess steam and hot air to escape. The fuel requirements for operating a major bath complex were enormous. The baths of Caracalla are estimated to have consumed about 10 tons of wood per day when operating at full capacity. This created a constant demand for timber that contributed to deforestation around Rome and other major cities throughout the empire. The slaves who operated the furnaces worked in incredibly harsh conditions. The furnace rooms were swelteringly hot, filled with smoke and ash, and required constant attention to maintain proper temperatures. These workers were among the lowest status individuals in Roman society, yet the entire bathing system depended on their skill and endurance. Water supply was another engineering challenge. The major Thermae required thousands of gallons of fresh water daily, delivered by Rome's famous aqueduct system. The water flowed through lead pipes into holding tanks, then was distributed throughout the complex to pools, fountains, and service areas. Used water was drained away through an equally sophisticated sewage system that carried waste out of the city. The Romans also developed systems for treating and recycling water where possible. Some baths had settling tanks where sediment could be removed from used water, and systems for collecting rainwater from the roofs and courtyards. Clean water was precious, even in Rome with its multiple aqueducts, and bath operators had strong incentives to use it efficiently. Temperature control was so precise that Romans developed specific terminology for different heat levels. Beyond the basic cold, warm and hot rooms, they distinguished between dry heat and moist heat, between radiant warmth from heated floors and direct heat from steam, and between the gradual warmth of the tepidarium and the intense heat of the laconicum. Special rooms designed to induce heavy sweating similar to modern saunas. With his body warmed by exercise and glistening with olive oil, Marcus was ready to begin the actual bathing sequence. This wasn't a simple matter of getting clean. It was a ritual journey through different environments, each designed to prepare the body and mind for the next stage of the experience. The traditional sequence followed a specific pattern that the Romans believed was optimal for both cleanliness and health. Like many aspects of Roman culture, this ritual had been refined over centuries and was considered almost sacred in its precision. The first stop was typically the frigidarium, the cold room. This might seem counterintuitive after warming up with exercise, but the Romans understood that starting with cold water helped close the pores and prepare the skin for the heat that would follow. The frigidarium was often the most architecturally impressive room in the bath complex, with high ceilings, large windows, and elaborate decorations. The cold plunge pool, or natatio, was usually the largest single body of water in the complex. Fed by the coldest water available, sometimes brought down directly from mountain springs through the aqueduct system, these pools maintained temperatures that could be quite shocking to someone accustomed to warm Mediterranean weather. Marcus would enter the cold water gradually, allowing his body to adjust to the temperature. This wasn't meant to be a quick dip, but rather a deliberate immersion that might last several minutes. The Romans believed that cold water had medicinal properties, stimulating circulation and strengthening the constitution against disease. In the frigidarium, conversation tended to be brief and focused. The shock of cold water made philosophical discussions less appealing than in the warmer rooms. Instead, bathers might exchange quick greetings, comment on the temperature of the water, or engage in friendly challenges about who could stay in the longest. From the frigidarium, Marcus would move to the tepidarium, the warm room that served as a transition space between the cold and hot environments. This was often the most social room in the entire complex, maintained at a temperature that was comfortable for extended periods and conducive to relaxation and conversation. The tepidarium might contain warm pools for soaking, but its primary function was as a place to adjust gradually to increasing heat. The floors were warm but not hot. The air was comfortably humid, and the atmosphere was perfectly suited for the kind of leisurely socializing that Romans valued most highly. Here, Marcus might encounter friends and acquaintances, engage in business discussions, or simply sit quietly and enjoy the gradual warming of his muscles. Some Romans spent the majority of their bath time in the tepidarium, finding it the perfect environment for both physical and mental relaxation. The tepidarium was also where many Romans received additional services. Masseurs worked in this room, using techniques learned from Greek traditions and enhanced with Roman innovations. A good massage in the tepidarium could last an hour or more, working out the tensions and knots accumulated from daily life. Some bath complexes employed specialists in various forms of bodywork. There were masseurs who focused on therapeutic techniques for specific ailments, others who specialized in athletic massage for those who had exercised vigorously in the palestra, and still others who provided more luxurious, relaxation-focused treatments using expensive oils and perfumes. The transition from tepidarium to caldarium was the most dramatic part of the bathing sequence. The caldarium, the hot room, was maintained at temperatures that could be almost overwhelming for someone not properly prepared. The heat here was intense but not dry. Steam from the hot pools created a humid environment that enveloped bathers like a warm, wet blanket. In the caldarium, Marcus would experience the most intense sweating of the entire process. The Romans believed that sweating was essential for good health, helping to purge the body of impurities and balance the humours that they thought controlled physical and mental well-being. The heat was so intense that the floors were often covered with wooden sandals or thick mats to protect bare feet from burning. The hot pools in the caldarium were kept at temperatures that would be considered dangerously hot by modern standards, often 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, 104 to 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Entering these pools required care and gradual adjustment. Romans would typically enter slowly, allowing their bodies to adapt to the heat incrementally. But the caldarium offered more than just hot water. Some rooms included what the Romans called a laconicum, a dry heat room similar to a modern sauna. These rooms had no pools, just benches arranged around heated walls and floors that created intense dry heat designed to induce rapid, heavy sweating. The psychological effects of the caldarium were as important as the physical ones. The intense heat created a state of deep relaxation that modern people might recognize from spa experiences or saunas. Breathing became slow and deep, muscles relaxed completely, and the mind often entered a meditative state that Romans found both pleasurable and therapeutic. Time in the caldarium was usually limited by the intensity of the heat. Most Romans would spend 15 to 30 minutes in the hottest rooms before the heat became uncomfortable. The key was to sweat thoroughly without becoming overheated or exhausted. When Marcus felt he had sweated sufficiently, it was time for one of the most distinctive aspects of Roman bathing, the use of the strigil. This curved bronze tool was used to scrape the combination of oil, sweat, and accumulated dirt from the skin. The technique required skill and practice, too gentle, and the cleaning wasn't effective, too aggressive, and the skin could be damaged. Many Romans employed bath attendants to perform this service, as it was difficult to reach all parts of one's own body effectively. A skilled attendant could remove every trace of oil and grime while leaving the skin smooth and comfortable. The material scraped off, called gloios, was considered so valuable for its supposed medicinal properties that was sometimes collected and sold. The final stage of the hot room experience was often a thorough rinsing with warm water to remove any remaining residue from the strigil treatment. Some caldaria had special fountains or shower-like arrangements that provided streams of perfectly heated water for this purpose. The Roman baths were far more than places for personal hygiene. They were the social centres of Roman life, where citizens from all walks of life came together in an atmosphere of relaxed equality that existed nowhere else in their rigidly hierarchical society. Understanding the social dynamics of the baths is essential to appreciating what truly happened in these remarkable spaces. In the baths, the normal markers of social status were temporarily set aside. Without togas to indicate rank, without slaves to demonstrate wealth, without the formal protocols of the forum or basilica, Romans encountered each other as fellow humans sharing a common experience. This didn't eliminate social distinctions entirely, but it created opportunities for interaction that would have been impossible elsewhere. The conversation in Roman baths was legendary throughout the ancient world. The steamy, relaxed atmosphere loosened tongues and minds alike. Philosophy was debated in the tepidarium, poetry recited in the caldarium, and business deals negotiated between the various pools. The baths became informal centres of learning, where knowledge was shared freely among all social classes. Politicians used the baths as unofficial meeting places where they could gauge public opinion, test new ideas, and build support for their policies. The relaxed atmosphere made people more willing to speak candidly about their views, providing valuable intelligence that couldn't be gathered in more formal settings. Merchants and craftsmen found the baths excellent places to network and build relationships that could lead to business opportunities. A casual conversation in the warm pools might result in a lucrative contract, a recommendation to a wealthy patron, or an introduction to someone with needed skills or resources. The baths also served as informal schools, where knowledge was transmitted from masters to apprentices, from older citizens to younger ones. A physician might discuss medical theories while soaking in the caldarium, or an engineer might explain architectural principles while admiring the hypocaust system that heated the building. Entertainment was a constant feature of bath life. Professional entertainers, musicians, storytellers, jugglers, and acrobats performed in the larger Thermae, providing background ambience and scheduled performances. These entertainers moved from room to room throughout the day, adapting their acts to the different atmospheres of the various spaces. Gambling was ubiquitous in the baths, despite occasional official disapproval. Romans played dice games, bet on athletic competitions in the palestra, and wagered on everything from the weather to political outcomes. The relaxed atmosphere and abundance of leisure time made the baths natural venues for games of chance. Food and drink were integral parts of the bath experience. Vendors sold everything from simple snacks to elaborate meals, and many Romans made dining at the baths a regular part of their daily routine. The foods were chosen for their compatibility with the hot, humid environment. Light, easily digestible items that wouldn't weigh heavily on someone moving between pools of different temperatures. Popular bath foods included honey cakes, fresh fruits, cheese, olives, and various kinds of seasoned breads. Drinks ranged from simple water and fruit juices to diluted wine. The Romans generally avoided strong alcohol in the baths, understanding that it didn't mix well with high temperatures and extended soaking. Some of the larger Thermae had elaborate dining facilities with kitchens, serving areas, and spaces for formal meals. These dining rooms were often positioned to take advantage of views over gardens or courtyards, providing pleasant settings for extended social dining. The baths also served important functions in Roman courtship and marriage customs. While men and women typically bathed at different times or in separate facilities, the baths were places where families socialized together and where young people could meet potential marriage partners in appropriately supervised settings. Libraries were common features of major bath complexes, providing spaces for reading and intellectual discussion. These libraries contained scrolls on a wide variety of subjects: literature, philosophy, history, science, and practical manuals on everything from agriculture to architecture. Reading in the baths was considered the height of civilized leisure. The social stratification that characterized the rest of Roman society wasn't entirely absent from the baths, but it was expressed in subtler ways. Wealthy Romans might arrive with entourages of slaves to attend them, use the finest oils and perfumes, and employ the most skilled masseurs and bath attendants. They might also have access to private areas or preferred times when the crowds were smaller. However, even these distinctions were muted compared to the stark class differences visible elsewhere in Roman society. In the shared pools and steamy rooms, all Romans were united by their common humanity and their participation in this daily ritual that defined civilized life. After experiencing the intense heat of the caldarium and the thorough cleansing of the strigil, Marcus would begin the return journey through the sequence of rooms, allowing his body to cool down gradually and transition back to the temperature of the outside world. The cooling process was considered just as important as the heating had been. The Romans understood that sudden temperature changes could be harmful to the body, so they designed the bathing sequence to provide gradual transitions that allowed the cardiovascular system to adjust safely. The return to the tepidarium was often the most socially active part of the entire bath experience. Marcus's body was now thoroughly clean, relaxed from the heat, and comfortable in the moderate temperature of the warm room. This was the ideal time for extended conversations, business discussions, or simply quiet contemplation of the day's experiences. Many Romans lingered in the tepidarium for extended periods during this phase of their bath visit. The combination of physical relaxation and social opportunity made this room a favourite gathering place where friendships were deepened and new relationships formed. The tepidarium was also where many Romans received additional treatments that were best performed on thoroughly warmed and cleaned skin. Professional masseurs provided therapeutic treatments for specific ailments, while beauticians offered services like hairstyling, manicures, and the application of cosmetics and perfumes. Some bathers chose to return to the palestra at this point for additional exercise, finding that their thoroughly warmed and flexible muscles were ideal for stretching routines or gentle calisthenics. This post-bath exercise was lighter than the pre-bath activities, focused more on maintaining the relaxed state achieved in the heated rooms rather than building up a sweat. The final return to the frigidarium served multiple purposes. The cold water helped close pores that had been opened by the heat, tightened the skin, and provided a refreshing contrast that left bathers feeling energized and alert. This final cold plunge was also believed to have medicinal benefits, strengthening the body's resistance to illness and improving overall vitality. The cold water at the end of the bathing sequence created a sense of completion and renewal. Romans often described feeling reborn after their daily bath, as if they had shed not just the physical grime of the day, but also its mental and spiritual burdens. For many Romans, the transition back to the apoditerium and the process of getting dressed marked the end of the most peaceful part of their day. The soft lighting, warm stones, and gentle sounds of the bath complex created an environment so conducive to relaxation that returning to the outside world could feel jarring. The dressing process was often as unhurried as the undressing had been. Romans might sit quietly on the stone benches, allowing their skin to air dry completely before putting on their clothing. Others used linen towels to pat themselves dry, being careful not to irritate skin that had been thoroughly cleansed and might be somewhat sensitive. Many Romans applied additional oils or perfumes after bathing, sealing in the benefits of their cleansing routine and providing pleasant scents that would last through the evening. These post-bath treatments were often more luxurious than the utilitarian olive oil used during the bathing process itself. The choice of clothing after bathing was also significant. Many Romans brought clean tunics to change into after their bath, symbolizing the fresh start that the bathing ritual represented. Others simply put on the same clothes they had worn to the baths, but even familiar garments felt different against thoroughly cleansed skin. As Marcus prepared to leave the baths, he might take a moment to appreciate the transformation he had undergone. The stress and fatigue of the day had been literally washed away, replaced by a sense of physical well-being and social connectedness that would carry him through the evening hours. The Roman Thermae were vast complexes that offered far more than bathing facilities. They were complete leisure and cultural centres that served as the heart of community life throughout the empire. To understand what truly happened in these spaces, we must explore all the activities and services that made them such central institutions in Roman society. Gardens and outdoor spaces were integral parts of most major bath complexes. These areas provided peaceful settings for walking, meditation, and quiet conversation away from the busier indoor rooms. The gardens were carefully designed with fountains, statues, and plantings that created cool, shaded areas where Romans could relax between bathing sessions or simply enjoy the natural beauty. The gardens often featured walking paths laid out in geometric patterns that encouraged leisurely strolling. These paths were lined with flowering plants chosen for their beauty and fragrance. Roses, lavender, myrtle, and other Mediterranean species that thrived in the Roman climate and provided sensory pleasure for bath visitors. Fountains in the garden areas served both practical and aesthetic purposes. They provided the soothing sound of moving water, helped cool the air through evaporation, and often featured elaborate sculptural decorations depicting mythological scenes or honouring important Roman figures. Libraries within bath complexes were among the most important cultural institutions in the Roman world. These libraries contained thousands of scrolls covering every subject known to Roman scholarship: literature, philosophy, history, science, mathematics, medicine, and practical arts. The combination of physical relaxation from bathing and intellectual stimulation from reading was considered the perfect expression of civilized leisure. The libraries were typically quiet spaces with reading areas designed for comfort and concentration. Readers might sit on cushioned benches or recline on couches while examining scrolls by natural light from large windows. Some libraries employed professional readers who would recite works aloud for the benefit of those who preferred to listen rather than read themselves. Athletic facilities extended far beyond the basic palestra found in smaller baths. Major thermae included running tracks, swimming pools separate from the bathing pools, spaces for wrestling and boxing, and areas for various ball games. These facilities served both recreational and competitive purposes, hosting regular athletic contests that drew participants and spectators from throughout the city. The swimming pools, called nataciones, were often the largest water features in the complex. Unlike the heated bathing pools, these were maintained at natural temperature and were designed specifically for exercise rather than relaxation. They were usually rectangular and large enough to accommodate multiple swimmers at once. Professional trainers and coaches worked in the athletic areas, providing instruction in various sports and physical conditioning techniques. These specialists, often Greeks, who had brought their athletic traditions to Rome, helped Romans develop their physical skills and maintain their fitness through structured exercise programs. Shops and commercial areas within the Thermae provided convenient access to all the goods and services that Romans might need for their bathing experience. These included vendors of oils, perfumes and bathing accessories, as well as shops selling clothing, jewellery and other luxury items. Barbers and hairstylists operated within the bath complexes, providing services that were considered essential parts of the grooming process. Roman men typically had their hair cut and styled regularly, and the post-bath period was considered an ideal time for these services when the hair was clean and the scalp was relaxed. Food vendors and dining facilities range from simple snack stands to elaborate restaurants capable of serving full meals. The foods available were adapted to the bath environment: light, easily digestible items that wouldn't interfere with the bathing process, and foods that remained appetizing in the warm, humid atmosphere of the Thermae. Medical services were commonly available in major bath complexes. Physicians maintained offices where they could consult with patients, and the baths themselves were often prescribed as treatments for various ailments. The Romans believed that proper bathing could cure or alleviate many health problems, and medical professionals were on hand to advise on therapeutic bathing techniques. Massage therapy was perhaps the most popular medical service offered in the baths. Professional masseurs, many of them trained in Greek techniques, provided treatments ranging from simple relaxation massage to therapeutic interventions for specific injuries or chronic conditions. The warm, humid environment of the baths was considered ideal for massage therapy. Meeting rooms and private spaces were available for Romans who needed to conduct business or hold private conversations within the bath complex. These areas provided quieter alternatives to the main bathing areas while still allowing participants to enjoy the overall atmosphere and amenities of the Thermae. Performance spaces hosted regular entertainment ranging from musical concerts to dramatic performances to poetry readings. These cultural events made the baths centres of artistic life as well as social gathering places. Professional entertainers, visiting artists and amateur performers all found audiences in the relaxed, receptive atmosphere of the baths. Religious facilities were integrated into most bath complexes, acknowledging the spiritual dimensions of the bathing ritual. Small shrines dedicated to various gods, particularly those associated with water, health, and purification, provided spaces for prayer and offerings. Some Romans considered their daily bath a form of religious observance, a ritual purification that connected them to divine forces. The combination of all these facilities and services created environments that could occupy Romans for entire afternoons or evenings. Many citizens made the Thermae their primary social and cultural centre, spending several hours daily in activities that range from basic hygiene to intellectual pursuits to business networking to entertainment. As the afternoon sun began to cast longer shadows and the light streaming through the high windows of the Thermae took on the golden quality of approaching evening, Marcus would begin to think about concluding his daily visit to the baths. But this ending was not abrupt. Like everything else in the Roman bathing experience, it followed a gentle rhythm that honoured the transitions between different states of being. The daily cycle of the baths mirrored the larger rhythms of Roman life and the natural world. Just as the sun moved across the sky, heating the earth and then allowing it to cool, Romans moved through their daily bathing ritual in harmony with these natural patterns. The timing was not accidental. The hottest part of the day, when outdoor work became uncomfortable, was precisely when the baths offered their cool interiors and refreshing waters. For the Romans, this daily ritual represented something far more significant than simple cleanliness. It was a form of renewal, a daily rebirth that allowed them to wash away not just the physical accumulation of dirt and sweat, but also the psychological burdens of their daily responsibilities. In the timeless environment of the Thermae, social hierarchies softened, business pressures receded, and the simple pleasure of warm water and human companionship took precedence. The baths also represented Roman civilization at its most refined and inclusive. Here was a technology and a social institution that brought comfort and pleasure to citizens regardless of their economic status. The same heated pools that welcomed wealthy senators also embraced freed slaves and working craftsmen. The same architectural marvels that impressed visiting dignitaries also served as daily gathering places for ordinary Romans seeking respite from their labours. As Marcus gathered his belongings from the apoditarium and prepared to step back out onto the streets of Rome, he carried with him more than just a clean body. He carried the social connections he'd renewed and formed, the business opportunities he'd discussed, the intellectual stimulation he had absorbed, and the simple human pleasure of having shared in a ritual that connected him to millions of his fellow citizens throughout the empire. The sound of his footsteps on the marble floors gradually faded as he moved toward the entrance, passing other Romans who were just beginning their daily bath ritual. The cycle continued, as it had for centuries, as it would for centuries more, until the great baths finally fell silent and their furnaces grew cold, leaving only ruins to remind us of this remarkable achievement of human civilization. Outside, the evening air felt cool against his freshly bathed skin. The streets were beginning to fill with other Romans concluding their daily activities. Some, like him, refreshed from the baths. Others heading toward the Thermae for their own evening of relaxation and social connection. The rhythm of the city pulsed around the steady heartbeat of the bathing houses, these great institutions that shape the daily lives of millions. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine yourself in that gentle world of warm stone and flowing water, where time moved slowly and the simple pleasures of cleanliness, warmth, and human companionship created a daily paradise in the heart of the ancient world. Let the sounds of flowing water and quiet conversation carry you into peaceful dreams, just as they carried countless Romans into the gentle embrace of evening, refreshed and renewed by their daily communion with one of civilization's most beautiful rituals. In the Roman baths, every day ended as it began, with the promise of renewal, the comfort of routine, and the assurance that tomorrow would bring another opportunity to step out of the hurried world and into the timeless sanctuary of warm water, gentle heat, and the quiet company of fellow human beings sharing in one of life's most fundamental pleasures. Sleep well and dream of marble columns rising into steam, of the gentle splash of warm water, and of a world where the art of living well was practiced daily in rooms filled with light, warmth, and the endless, soothing rhythm of human voices carried on currents of heated air. That concludes our journey through the Roman public baths. Thank you for joining Sleepyhead Society on this peaceful exploration of ancient daily life. Rest well, and we'll see you next time for another gentle journey through history's quieter moments.